So director Christopher Nolan is set to release his adaptation of The Odyssey this July, and in anticipation for the new trailer for the film, which is scheduled to drop this May, the filmmaker attended yesterday's CinemaCon experience with an extended look at the upcoming epic. The footage included the previously seen IMAX prologue that was attached to Avatar 3 last December, but had some new footage at the start and end of that segment. Before those in attendance got that new footage though, director Christopher Nolan took to the CinemaCon stage to discuss why he wanted to make The Odyssey. He said, "The Odyssey is a story that has fascinated generation after generation for centuries. It is not a story, it is the story." He attributed early experiences of watching IMAX movies in Chicago as the influence for him to want to shoot an entire film on the IMAX format. He continued saying, "This is a long-held dream of mine, and this is the film to do it with. We shot all of The Odyssey in IMAX, not just the action scenes, but everything. We pushed IMAX engineers to find a way to make an entire film in the format with no aspect ratio changes." He then ended his discussion by talking a bit about the main cast and the focus of the film through the central performances. He said, "At the heart of it is Matt Damon and Hathaway and Tom Holland, and this is a story about family and a father's desperate journey to return home, not just to reclaim his kingdom, but to reunite with his wife and save his son from an increasingly hostile world. It's been a nightmare to film, and Matt Damon would be the first one to say it, but it was a nightmare in all the right ways." It's interesting that the director said all of this because I did do a video the other day talking about how I thought he might split the film into 3 timeline perspectives. One being of Odysseus over his 10-year journey after Troy, one being of Telemachus over the 40 days during the search for his father, and then the other being of Penelope in the 4 days before the beggar Odysseus reveals himself. Now, Nolan didn't confirm whether he's taking this route, but it did sound similar in him mentioning those 3 perspectives being at the very heart of his approach to the story. We'll have to see what route he does take, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he attempts to structure his adaptation. But overall, that was really all the director had to say about the film at the event, and it was at this point that those in attendance at the panel got to see some footage, including a few new shots. Coming to that footage, we start with a new scene from the film as it opens with Matt Damon's Odysseus shirtless on the beach with a burly beard, asking Charlize Theron's Calypso how long he's been on her island. She responds by saying a long time. Odysseus admits that he can't remember anything before Troy, saying, "Did I have a wife, children, maybe a son, and if I had a son, how old would he be now?" And Charlize Theron's costuming in the footage is described as being a simplistic and elegant dress. Now, early in Homer's epic story, and before Odysseus ever appears on the page, the gods begin to discuss his fate. We learn that he is being held on Calypso's island, unable to return home, and this moment establishes the emotional tension of the story. We learn that Odysseus is alive but lost to the world, detained by a goddess who loves him. A few books later into the story, the gods meet on Olympus and finally decide that Odysseus has suffered long enough. Hermes is sent to Calypso's island to deliver Zeus's command, saying that Calypso must let Odysseus go. When Hermes arrives, he finds Calypso in her lush, secluded cave, but Odysseus is not inside with her as he is on the shore, staring out to sea and longing for home. Calypso's reaction to Hermes is one of the most powerful speeches in the epic story as she lashes out at the gods' hypocrisy. Male gods take mortal lovers freely, but when a goddess loves a mortal man, she is punished for it. Eventually, she tells Odysseus that he may leave, though she warns him that the world beyond her island will bring him nothing but suffering. She even offers him immortality again, a life without pain, without aging, and without loss. But Odysseus refuses, and while he admits that she is more beautiful than Penelope, beauty is not the point because home is. What follows is a bittersweet farewell as Calypso helps him build a raft, stocks it with food and drink, and watches him sail away after 7 years together. It's a moment that blends heartbreak, resignation, and the epic's central theme in the irresistible pull of home. So that's what this opening scene of the CinemaCon footage seems to be focusing on in an important moment that frames the pull of the entire narrative. The other big takeaway from this opening is that Charlize Theron is now playing Calypso in The Odyssey rather than Circe, which had been reported on for many months by multiple outlets. I didn't expect that to be the case, but now that we've got an official description of the footage showed at CinemaCon, it seems like someone else will be playing Circe. Anyway, following this opening scene with Odysseus and Calypso, the CinemaCon audience then got the extended version of the IMAX prologue that was played in theatres at the back end of last year. This featured the Trojan Horse scene in Troy, which is the opening sequence of Nolan's film. Most of this footage is exactly the same as it was previously, but there were some new shots in the montage at the very end. To briefly recap the IMAX prologue, it starts with a flashback that shows Telemachus being pulled aside by John Bernthal's Menelaus, asking if he's heard the story of the horse and if he heard it from the inside. We then flash back to see the sequence involving the Trojan horse being brought into Troy. The soldier is stabbed when the Trojans outside check to see if the horse is occupied, and his mouth is covered to keep him from screaming. Odysseus then leads his men stealthily out of the Trojan horse once they are within Troy's walls during a dark nighttime sequence. Ludwig Göransson's score really starts to pick up at this point, being intense, percussive, and rising in pitch. A Trojan soldier eventually sounds the alarm as Odysseus's men make their way to open the city gates. The Trojan soldiers start to rapidly amass as Odysseus's men struggle to open the gates, but when they do finally open them, an army awaits on the other side and storms into the city. Among the crowd is Menelaus' brother Agamemnon, played by Benny Safdie, who is in the same armor that we saw during the previous trailer. And just like what we saw in the December prologue, we cut back to Menelaus with him saying to Telemachus, "I think you know the rest." We then get to the montage at the very end of the footage, but this time it does include a few new shots that have never been seen before. The audience at CinemaCon apparently got a new look at Odysseus' shipwreck, and this is followed by a quick glimpse of Robert Pattinson's Antinous yelling crazily at a feast and throwing something in anger. Based on that description of the new Antinous shot, this is likely his outburst scene from Book 17 of Homer's epic poem. It is one of the poem's most sharpest, revealing moments of the suitor arrogance. In the scene in the poem, Odysseus, who is still disguised as the ragged beggar, has finally entered his own hall after 20 years of being away. He moves from suitor to suitor, begging for scraps not just because he needs the food, but because Athena has urged him to test the men who have overrun his home. But the character Antinous, the ringleader and the most vicious of the suitors, reacts to him with fury. He berates the character Eumaeus for bringing a beggar into the palace and mocks Odysseus' story. And when Odysseus fires back with a measured and pointed insult, Antinous snaps, grabbing a stool and hurling it at him. Even some of the other suitors there are disgusted by the cruelty of the act, and this is the moment where Antinous crosses a line, with his downfall not only fated but deserved. So I think the described footage at CinemaCon is a brief flash from that exact moment in the Odyssey poem. Following this moment though, the CinemaCon audience got another new shot in the montage, and it apparently features some new looks at the Cyclops. Those who saw it say they heard the growling of the Cyclops, followed by his hand reaching towards Odysseus and grasping one of the other soldiers. The soldier is quickly snatched back and eaten by the Cyclops Polyphemus off-screen, who is covered in shadows. The man is then heard screaming for several seconds, and it's described as being brutal. And something to note is that those who saw this ending shot said that they wouldn't be surprised if the Odyssey movie is actually rated R. But that was all that was revealed and shown for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey at CinemaCon, and while a lot of it was just extended footage from what we'd already seen in theatres last year, the additional shots and scenes do sound very impressive. Considering how much marketing there is for films these days, I think it's awesome that a director like Christopher Nolan can hold back on as much as he can when it comes to the marketing. It was reported recently that they have already finished the film, so I think the director knows what he has, and I think they're just showing enough to get us talking about it. Yes, I was expecting there to be at least a few more minutes of footage shown, but from the sounds of everything that was screened, it was still very successful in getting those who saw it excited. But in all this talk about seeing some more new footage from the film, I wanted to end this video by discussing the potential release date of that next trailer. Now, if you didn't already know, the second trailer for Christopher Nolan's July releases typically appears online around the early days of May. We are approaching the month of May fast, which means there are a couple of upcoming dates for when this new trailer might drop. The first date I have is a much earlier prediction, and that is April 22nd for the release of the new Michael movie. Michael is being co-distributed by Universal internationally, which is the same studio behind the Odyssey film, so I think that would be an ideal date to drop the next trailer, attaching it to another massive film. The only other film that I can see it being attached in front of is The Mandalorian and Grogu on May 22nd, as again that is another big IMAX film that can promote another upcoming IMAX release. However, if the trailer isn't being attached to a particular film that's coming out, then I reckon it will just drop online towards the start of May. The Oppenheimer trailer was released online on the 8th of May in 2023, so I would expect it to be around that time frame. Again though, that is if it isn't attached to a screening of an upcoming film. Whatever happens though, like with the teaser trailer, I do think that this new trailer will be released online, so I wouldn't worry about not being able to see it. And hopefully when the trailer does come out, we'll get to see a much more expanded look at Christopher Nolan's highly anticipated film. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.